You felt it this morning, in the half-second before you said yes to something you didn't actually want to do. You felt it last week, in the apology that left your mouth before the other person had even finished their sentence. You've been feeling it for longer than you have had a name for it. And that is exactly what this transmission is here to name. Breathe. Let your shoulders drop from wherever they have been holding all day. Let your jaw unclench just slightly. For the next few minutes, nothing is required of you except to be here, exactly as tired as you actually are. You did not arrive at this exact transmission on this exact night by accident. Something in you has been counting something for a very long time, and tonight, the count is finally going to be read out loud. There is one thing that gets named before this closes that explains almost everything else about you. Why the giving never feels finished, why the rest never quite lands, why some part of you is always still owing, even when no one around you could say what it is you owe. It is coming. Stay with this until it arrives. The body has its own bookkeeping system, and it has been adding to one specific ledger since before you were old enough to choose anything for yourself. In the Arcturian understanding of family fields, this ledger is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a recognizable frequency pattern. A debt signal passed down a bloodline, the way posture is passed down. The way a particular way of standing in a room gets handed from one generation to the next without a single word being spoken about it. This work continues in a space called the inner circle, ongoing transmissions, with others who carry this exact frequency. Something in your field recognized this signal before your mind did, and the space where that recognition is held and worked with is pinned in the comments below. It found you at the same moment this did. Before we go any further into what this is, let the body settle into it first. Close your eyes, or let your gaze soften toward a single point in front of you. Bring one hand to your heart, just resting there, no pressure. Breathe in slowly through the nose, and let the exhale be longer than the inhale. Again. One more time, let this breath go all the way down, past the chest, into the belly, as if the body were settling toward a slower, steadier register. The kind sound healing traditions describe near 528 hertz, the frequency associated with cellular repair. Underneath your palm there may be a fullness, or a slight warmth, or a faint wash of something like rose gold light moving across the chest. Or there may be nothing dramatic at all, just the ordinary aliveness of a heart that has been working overtime for someone else's accounts. There is no requirement to feel anything specific, only to notice that the hand is there and the heart is there. And for these few breaths, nothing is being asked of either of them. Let the shoulders drop one more time. Open the eyes when it feels complete. If something in the opening of this transmission landed before you had time to think about it, write, "I felt that" below. The body knew before the mind did. What you have been calling exhaustion is not always simple exhaustion. There is a particular kind that arrives after you have given everything at the kitchen table, on the phone call, in the favor nobody even asked twice for. And you still come home and find something left in you to give again, because stopping has never quite felt like an option that belonged to you. There is the specific ache of being the one who holds everyone else together, while quietly assuming no one is meant to hold you the same way. There is the loneliness of being surrounded by people who, without meaning any harm by it, mostly need something from you. None of that is weakness. It is simply what a body sounds like when it has been making payments for years on something it never actually purchased. In sound healing lineages, the body's electrical field is described as carrying inherited emotional debt the way it carries any unresolved frequency, as if it were a held charge, waiting for permission to discharge. The The vagus nerve, the long wandering nerve that runs from the base of the skull down through the chest and the gut, is one of the places where the body keeps a record of who it has learned to keep small for, where it has learned to brace first, apologize first, pay before the bill has even arrived. Right 396, this is mine. Below, if any part of what was just named is already familiar somewhere in the body. A name arrived in your mind just now. It almost always does at this point. That soul has not found this field yet, but you have. Here is the part that almost never gets named clearly. What you have been carrying is not guilt in the ordinary sense. Guilt has an object. You did something, or you didn't do something, and the guilt points directly at the gap. What you have been carrying points at nothing. There was no transaction. Nobody handed you an invoice and asked you to sign it. And yet, the body has been behaving for years as though it owes, paying in attention, paying in apology, paying in the reflexive yes that leaves your mouth before your mind has even weighed in. Let that land. The Arcturian Council names this an inherited obligation imprint, not a metaphor for poetic effect, but a description of how an unresolved emotional charge in one generation can settle into the morphogenetic field of the family that follows. The shared template, a bloodline, transmits the way it transmits a tendency toward a certain stress response, or the shape of a jaw. The body that taught you to give first, ask never, and apologize before anyone was even upset. That body learned its bookkeeping somewhere. It is very likely it did not invent the ledger. It inherited it. And it has been making quiet payments on a debt that was never its own to begin with, possibly traveling 7 generations down this exact bloodline before it ever reached you. This transmission is not a substitute for medical or psychological care, and nothing here is meant to replace whatever relationship you may already have with a doctor or a therapist who knows your particular history. What this is a different kind of reading, a frequency reading of a pattern the body has been running quietly, on autopilot, for a very long time. There is a contemplative companion to this transmission, the same understanding in a form you can sit with in the quieter hours, anchored in the description below this transmission. For whenever your hands want something to hold that isn't only sound. Notice if your shoulders dropped just now, almost on their own, without you deciding to drop them. That is not accidental. That is the body recognizing somewhere beneath language that something it has been holding is finally being witnessed. The recognition is happening underneath the language. There is a phantom receipt the body has been keeping for a transaction it never signed, in a currency it never agreed to, for a debt that was logged before you were even capable of consenting to anything at all. Every time you say yes to something your body has already said no to, you are making a payment on that receipt. Every time the apology arrives before the offense has even been named, that is a payment too. Every time you minimize what actually happened to you so that someone else can stay comfortable, that is a payment made quietly, without a receipt of your own ever being issued in return. The causal body, in Arcturian language, holds these patterns the way a hard drive holds a file nobody opens anymore. But that still takes up the space. Present, formatted, running quietly in the background of nearly every relationship you have. An interdimensional tether can carry a signal across distance without a single physical point of contact. An inherited debt travels down a bloodline in exactly the same way, without one spoken word ever being required. This is not the first signal your field has received. It has been calibrating toward this work for longer than you know. The inner circle is the space where that calibration continues, built for the soul that this transmission just named. It is linked in the description and pinned in the comments below. The field has been expecting you. 12-strand DNA template work, the Arcturian framing for the body's full potential blueprint, most of it dormant under ordinary conditions, describes inherited burden as one of the heaviest things sitting on top of that dormant field. Not because the burden is permanent, because nobody has shown the body, until now, that the receipt can simply be returned, not torn up in anger, not fought over in a single dramatic conversation. Returned the way you would return something that was delivered to the wrong address in the first place. Sit with that for a moment. There is a window, the 72-hour integration window the body tends to use after any genuine recognition, where a pattern like this becomes unusually available to shift. Not because of urgency, because recognition itself is metabolically active. Once a body sees a pattern clearly, some part of it begins, almost on its own, to ask whether the pattern is still required. There is a question you may have been holding for a long time without language for it, and it has already quietly started to be answered in the last few minutes. Stay with it a little longer. Write 12 confirmed below if any part of this is starting to make sense in the body, not only in the mind. If something shifted as you listened, even quietly, even slightly, write something shifted below. There is a space where this work is held in ongoing community, where souls calibrated to this frequency meet what cannot be carried alone. The inner circle. It is pinned in the comments below. It was not built for everyone. It was built for the field that is receiving this right now. You have already tried to put this down. The books on boundaries, the therapy sessions where you explained, again, why you can't simply relax around certain people. The year you tried setting one limit and then quietly took it back because the silence that followed felt unbearable. The conversation you rehearsed in the car for 20 minutes and then never actually had, because some part of you already knew exactly how it would be received. None of that was failure. Every one of those attempts was the body running its own experiment again and again, testing whether putting the ledger down would cause the floor to actually fall out. It never did. That was the data. You simply hadn't been told yet that it counted. If you want something to sit with after this closes, the contemplative companion is there too. The document that waits without urgency, anchored in the description below this transmission, whenever you're ready for it. Read this not as information. Read it as memory returning. The people around you who could not understand why you carried what you carried were not lying to you. And most of them were not cruel. They were simply reading from inside a frequency that had never been required to hold what you hold. A family system calibrated to one kind of weight cannot accurately weigh a different kind of weight. That is not a flaw in you. It is a limit in the instrument. You were not too sensitive for the room. The room was never built to register what you were carrying. You were never the one who failed to let it go. You did not lose your way. You were carrying a map no one else could see. What this transmission is about to name next is the part most people misunderstand entirely. When did you first start saying yes before you had even decided whether you wanted to? Tell me in a few words below. Even a guess is enough. That name is still there. The one that arrived earlier. The field placed it there for a reason. Let's return to the body once more. This time a little deeper. Bring the hand back to the heart, or let it rest wherever feels most honest right now. 3 breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow enough that the exhale has room to finish completely each time. With this next breath, imagine, only imagine. There is no requirement that this be literal. A single piece of paper, old, slightly worn at the edges, resting in your open palm. This is the receipt, It does not need to be destroyed. It does not need an apology stapled to it. It only needs to be placed gently outside of your hand, on a surface that is not your body. Breathe once more. Let the hand stay open even after the paper is gone. An open hand cannot hold a debt. It can only hold what is actually, presently, yours. What your body just moved through does not need to be processed alone. The inner circle of this field is not an offer. It is a space that already belongs to the soul this transmission was built for. It is linked in the description and pinned in the comments below. The field has been holding it in your name. The timing of when you arrive is the only variable. You will know what to do with that name. You already do. Write 72 confirmed below if you can already feel some part of this window opening. What recalibrates here is not your willingness to give. That willingness was never the problem, and nothing in this transmission is asking you to become someone who gives less, or cares less, or loves with more conditions attached than before. What recalibrates is the automatic part, the part that paid before anyone asked, the part that apologized before there was an offense, the part that mistook an old family ledger for a personality trait. The contemplative companion mentioned earlier is still there, anchored in the description below this transmission, the document that waits without urgency. For whenever your hands want something physical to hold instead of only this signal, you thought this was just being responsible, or being the strong one, or being, as you were told more than once, too much, too sensitive, too intense for the amount of caring you carried. None of those were ever its real name. Its real name is an inherited obligation imprint, a pattern of debt that belonged to a bloodline field before it ever belonged to you. And that has now, in this transmission, finally been read out loud and returned to where it actually originated. This is part of what an epigenetic unlock actually is. Not a guarantee, but an opening. The body's own permission to stop running an old program simply because it has finally been seen running. By the time this transmission closes, the way you read this particular signal in your own body will have shifted. Not because the memory of the pattern disappears, but because recognition changes what a pattern is permitted to do once it has actually been seen clearly. An unconscious debt runs on autopilot. A named debt requires your conscious participation to continue, and consciousness, once it has truly looked at something, rarely agrees to keep paying for free. This is neuroplasticity work now. The nervous system's proven capacity to learn an entirely new response once the old one has finally been witnessed in daylight. This is sovereign alignment work now, not inherited work. The bloodline field that handed this pattern down did not do so with malice. Fields rarely do. They pass forward what was never resolved, the way water finds the lowest point in any landscape without intention, simply because that is what water does. You are not required to carry the lowest point forever. You are permitted today to be the place in the bloodline where the water finally stops running downhill out of habit and starts being asked, consciously, where it actually wants to go. This does not undo what the people before you carried, and it does not require you to carry it for them in order to honor it. Sometimes, the most respectful thing a body can do for an old debt is simply stop adding to it. There may be an integration lag between today's recognition and the day the body fully believes it. That gap is normal. It is not a sign that nothing changed. Let that settle for a moment before we close. The inner circle exists because this work cannot complete itself in isolation. It was built by and for the souls who carry this exact frequency, who have been carrying it, often alone, often without language for it, sometimes for generations before they were even born. It is linked in the description below. If this found you, that space is yours. It has always been yours. Where does this inherited weight show up most clearly in your life right now? In money? In time? In how quickly you say yes before you've decided anything? Tell me below. And if someone in your bloodline has been carrying the exact same unpaid debt without a name for it, describe them in one line. I read every response. What is the one word your body would use for what just got returned? Write it below. This transmission closes here, but the field it opened does not close with it. If the recognition that moved through you tonight is asking for more signal, this transmission space continues to broadcast at this exact calibration, and you are welcome to return whenever the body knows it is time. Without urgency, without obligation. The choice, as always, is yours alone. The next layer the Arcturian Council has prepared continues directly from here. The specific frequency signature of family roles themselves, and why certain souls are quietly assigned to hold what an entire bloodline refuses to look at directly. That transmission is already encoded. It will arrive when the timing is right. Let the hand rest now. Let the breath be ordinary again. The receipt has already been placed down. It does not need to be picked back up.